Mr. Welch. Director Muller, did you find there was no collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia?
Well, we don't use the word collusion. And the word we usually use is not collusion. One of the other terms that fills in what collusion is not used. In any event, we decided not to use the word collusion in as much as it has no relevance to the criminal law arena.
The term is conspiracy that you prefer to use.
That's a conspiracy, exactly right.
You help me, I'll help you.
Thank you.
It's an agreement. Thank you. And in fact, you had to then make a charging decision after your investigation where unless there was enough evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, you wouldn't make a charge, correct?
Generally, that's the case.
But making that decision does not mean your investigation failed to turn up evidence of conspiracy.
Absolutely correct.
And in fact, I'll go through some of the significant findings that your exhaustive investigation made. You found, as I understand it, that from May 2016 until the end of the campaign chairman, Mr. Manafort, gave private polling information to Russian agents, correct?
And you speak in microphone. Yeah, I will.
Thank you. And your investigation found that in June 2016, Donald Trump Jr. made an arrangement to meet at Trump Tower along with Jared Kushner and others, expecting to receive dirt on the Hillary Clinton campaign, correct?
Correct.
And you found in your investigation that on July 27th, candidate Trump called on Russia to hack Hillary Clinton's email, something that for the first time they did about 5 hours later, correct?
Correct.
And you also found that on August 2nd, Mr. Manafort met with a person tied to Russian intelligence, Mr. Kalimnik, and gave him internal campaign strategy, aware that Russia was intending to do a misinformation social media campaign, correct?
I'm not certain of the tie there.
But the fact of that meeting, you agree
The fact
with?
of the meeting took place is accurate.
In your investigation, as I understand it, also found that in late summer of 2016, the Trump campaign, in fact, devised its strategy and messaging around WikiLeaks releases of materials that were stolen from the Democratic National Committee, correct?
Is that from the report?
Yes, it's according to Mr. Gates.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And you also talked earlier about the finding in your investigation that in September and October of 2016, Donald Trump Jr. had email communications with WikiLeaks, now indicted, about releasing information damaging to the Clinton campaign, correct?
True.
So I understand you made a decision, prosecutorial decision, that this would not rise to proof beyond a reasonable doubt. But I ask if you share my concern. And my concern is, if we established a new normal from this past campaign that is going to apply to future campaigns, so that if any one of us running for the U.S. House, any candidate for the U.S. Senate, any candidate for the presidency of the United States, aware that if a hostile foreign power is trying to influence an election, has no duty to report that to the FBI or other authorities.
I hope.
Go ahead.
I hope this is not the new normal, but I fear it is.
And would in fact have the ability, without fear of legal repercussion, to meet with agents of that foreign entity hostile to the American election?
I'm sorry, what is the question?
Is that an apprehension that you share with me?
Yes.
And that there would be no repercussions whatsoever to Russia if they did this again. And as you stated earlier, as we sit here, they're doing it now. Is that correct?
You're absolutely right.
Do you have any advice to this Congress as together what we should do to protect our electoral system and accept responsibility on our part to report to you or your successor when we're aware of hostile foreign engagement in our elections?
I would say the basis, the first line of defense really is the ability of the various agencies who have some piece of this to not only share information, but share expertise, share targets, and use the full resources that we have to address this problem.
Thank you, Director Muller. I yield back.
Mr. Maloney. Mr. Muller, thank you. I know it's been a long day, and I want to make clear how much respect I have for your service and for your extraordinary career. I want you to understand my questions in that context, sir. I'm going to be asking you about Appendix C to your report, and in particular, the decision not to do a sworn interview with the president. It's really the only subject I want to talk to you about, sir. Why didn't you subpoena the president?
Well, at the outset, after we took over and initiated the investigation.
If I could ask you to speak on the
Yeah, of course. At the outset, after we took over the investigation and began it, pursued it, quite obviously one of the things we anticipated wanting to accomplish that is having the interview of the president. We negotiated from within for a little over a year, and I think what you reverted to in the appendix lays out our expectations as a result of those negotiations. But finally, when it became, we were almost towards the end of our investigation, and we had little success in pushing to get the interview of the president. We decided that we did not want to exercise the subpoena powers because of the necessity of expediting the end of the investigation.
Excuse me,
I was going to say, the expectation was if we did subpoena the president, he would fight the subpoena, and we would be in the midst of the investigation for a substantial period of time.
Right, but as we sit here, you've never had an opportunity to ask the president in-person questions under oath, and so obviously that must have been a difficult decision. And you're right, Appendix C lays that out, and indeed, I believe you described the in-person interview as vital. That's your word. And of course, you make clear you had the authority and the legal justification to do it. As you point out, you waited a year. You put up with a lot of negotiations. You made numerous accommodations, which you lay out so that he could prepare and not be surprised. I think you were trying to be fair to the president. And by the way, you were going to limit the questions when you got to written questions to Russia only. And in fact, you did go with written questions after about 9 months, sir, right? And the president responded to those, and you had some hard language for what you thought of those responses. What did you think of the president's written responses, Mr. Muller?
It was certainly not as useful as the interview would be.
In fact, you pointed out, and by my count, there were more than 30 times when the president said he didn't recall, he didn't remember, no independent recollection, no current recollection. And I take it by your answer that it wasn't as helpful. That's why you used words like incomplete, imprecise, inadequate, insufficient. Is that a fair summary of what you thought of those written answers?
That is a fair summary. And I presume that comes from the report.
And yet, sir, and I ask this respectfully, by the way, the president didn't ever claim the Fifth Amendment, did he?
I'm not going to talk to that.
Well, from what I can tell, sir, at one point it was vital, and then at another point it wasn't vital. And my question to you is, why did it stop being vital? And I can only think of 3 explanations. One is that somebody told you you couldn't do it, but nobody told you you couldn't subpoena the president. Is that right?
No, we understood we couldn't subpoena the president.
Rosenstein didn't tell you, Whitaker didn't tell you, Barr didn't tell you you couldn't.
We could serve a subpoena.
So the only other explanation, well, there's 2 others, I guess. One, that you just flinched. That you had the opportunity to do it and you didn't do it. But sir, you don't strike me as the kind of guy who flinches.
I hope not.
Well, then the third explanation, I hope not too, sir. And the third explanation I can think of is that you didn't think you needed it. And in fact, what caught my eye was page 13 of volume 2, where you said, in fact, you had a substantial body of evidence. And you cite a bunch of cases there, don't you, about how you often have to prove intent to obstruct justice without an in-person interview. That's the kind of nature of it. And you use terms like a substantial body of evidence, significant evidence of the president's intent. So my question, sir, is did you have sufficient evidence of the president's intent to obstruct justice, and is that why you didn't do the interview?
There's a balance. In other words, how much evidence you have that satisfy the last element against how much time are you willing to spend in the courts litigating the the interviewing the president.
And in this case, you felt that you had enough evidence of the president's intent.
We had to make a balanced decision in terms of how much evidence we had compared to the length of time it would take.
And sir, because I have limited time, you thought that if you gave it to the Attorney General or to this Congress, that there was sufficient evidence that it was better than that delay.
Should you state that again?
Well, that it was better than the delay to present the sufficient evidence, your term, of the president's intent to obstruct justice to the Attorney General and to this committee. Isn't that why you didn't do the interview?
The reason we didn't do the interview is because of the length of time that it would take to resolve the issues attendant to that.
Thank you, sir.